Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you once again for joining us on the 2016 Ultimate Leadership Development Series. You know, I appreciate the emails, I appreciate the calls, and I appreciate the guidance that you're giving us into developing the best content to help you across your leadership journey. And this was one of the suggestions that you had for a class, and we're very happy to bring it to you. And Winston in Provo, Utah, I hope we've met your expectations. In this presentation, we're going to talk about your basic leadership skills and what exactly do you need to know to be successful as a leader. One of the things to think about is you're just starting off in your leadership career. Maybe you've had no leadership training. What are those basic skills that you need to know to make sure that you're going to be successful and to make your workforce and your organization successful? We're going to talk about those today. And I'm your host, Chris Cebollero. And as I've always said, it's just an honor when I have the opportunity to come and chat with you, share a little bit of my knowledge and experience, and hopefully you're able to use it as you move along in your leadership career. You know, one of the great things about leadership is like a muscle. The more you use it, the bigger it gets and the stronger that it gets. And one of the things that I enjoy the most about being a leadership consultant is that this is a science. And once you use this science, you're going to be able to create beauty. You're going to be able to create synergy. You're going to be able to create teamwork. You're going to be able to create the organization that you are looking to create. But it doesn't happen by itself, and you've got to use your leadership skills, and you've got to grow that muscle to ensure that it gets bigger and that it gets stronger. Let's go ahead and take a look at our objectives of what we're going to cover today. We're going to discuss the differences between leadership and management. There's that line between leadership and management that we have to discuss. At the end of this presentation, you're going to be able to explain what the different leadership styles are. And then with that, we're going to discuss and touch a little bit on servant leadership. I think that if we're going to be leading our people, we've got to be able to do it with a smattering of all the leadership styles, but there has to be a concentration of servant leadership. We're going to talk about some of the most important leadership qualities, and then it wouldn't be to your benefit if we didn't discuss the importance and the elements of emotional intelligence and leading with emotional intelligence and what that means to you. Let's go ahead and jump right in with 2 feet, and I want to ask you the question, why did you want to become a leader, or why are you considering becoming a leader? Is it because now you get to have that parking space that you always wanted? Or maybe it's the fact that you're going to be making more money, or now you can come to work in a shirt and a tie? I got to tell you, if your motivation to become a leader is self-serving, you are not going to be successful as a leader, and I'm going to tell you that right now. One of the things that you need to think about is to be a good leader is you've got to be able to guide your workforce, and you've got to be able to inspire them, and you've got to be able to motivate them. You've got to be able to be the example, set the standards for others to follow. That's what being a good leader is. Because I got to tell you, when you get into leadership, that it's going to seem like you're going to be bailing water every day. And because of that, you need to make certain that you are choosing the right reasons to become a leader. So with that, let's go ahead and discuss the definition of leadership. When you think about the definition of leadership, what comes to mind? And everybody has their own different definition. And I want you to keep your definition in mind. And if you use one of the canned definitions of leadership, here's one right here, right off the internet. And as I was looking through the different definitions, there are literally countless definitions of leadership. Or maybe do you pick one of the leadership pictures that are out there and you kind of use this as your definition of leadership? Here's a great one. Courageous action to create and passionately communicate a clear vision that inspires the team to bring the vision to fruition. I mean, that's a great definition of leadership. But I want to ask you, what is your definition of leadership? What is it that you want to be able to ensure that you're able to do when it comes to forging your leadership knowledge, forging your leadership style? That's what's really important about leadership. It makes no difference what the definition is. What you really have to be able to do is you've got to be able to find what your definition of leadership, because it's your definition of leadership that's going to help you be successful. And it's going to start with the foundation of what you believe your definition of leadership is. Now, you may need to grow that definition. You may need to polish that definition. You may need to add some components to that definition. But when you start off down this path, it has to be with your definition of leadership. But before you define what your definition of leadership is, let's talk about what leadership isn't. I hear a lot of people who say to me, you know what, Chris, I can't wait to get into leadership. I can't wait to become a leader. Well, I got to tell you, leadership isn't a noun. Leadership isn't a position. It's not the position you hold in the organization, or it's not the title that comes with that position that makes a difference. It's also not the achievements that you've attained in your career. You know what? What you've done yesterday is well and good, but today, those achievements are done. And now you've got to create new achievements as you move forward. So your achievements don't make you a leader. And certainly the ability to manage processes doesn't make you a leader. So what does leadership actually mean if it's not a noun? Leadership is a verb. Leadership is about doing, is about giving, it's about sharing, and it's about loving the opportunity of leading people to the next level. There's a great quote by Donald McGannon, and he says that leadership is an action. Leadership isn't a position. And you've got to be able to think that regardless of what your position is, you have the ability to lead people every day. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. But I want to talk about my friend and mentor, John Maxwell. And if you don't know John was just named for the 7th year in a row the #1 leadership influence in the world. Some of his other accomplishments is he's published over 80 books, some great books. He's taught Fortune 500 companies. He's taught the leaders of the military. He's brought his leadership insight to the NFL. But one of the things that's really incredible is John is able to say that he has influenced over 6 million leaders around the world. And in February, he actually brought his leadership team down to the country of Paraguay at the president of Paraguay's invitation to teach the country of Paraguay leadership. So I have a great friend and mentor in John Maxwell, but the reason that I have John up here is if you need a definition of leadership, I think that his definition of leadership is the best. And John says in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And we go back to the thought of your leadership not being a position. You can be the person who sweeps the floor. You can work in the cafeteria. You can work in the supply room, in the mail room. You have the opportunity to influence somebody every day. And if you're influencing somebody, you're leading somebody. So if you want a definition of leadership, use that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I think you've got a great foundation to start. Well, now that we've talked about leadership, let's talk a little bit about management. And let's talk about the difference between leadership and management. Because when it comes down to the processes of what we have to do in our day, we've got to be able to make certain that those processes are going to work. And I'm going to tell you right now, when you think about leadership and when you think about management, they are at the total end of the spectrum. You manage processes. You manage schedules. You don't manage people. You lead people. What you do is you manage things and then you lead people. So as you're thinking about how things work in your organization and how you're going to manage those gears of process, that's where management comes in. But that doesn't mean that you're a leader. You've got to be able to make certain that your leadership ability and your ability to manage work in concert with each other. And the best way to put it is making sure that the work is done by others. That's the accomplishment of the manager. When it comes to ensuring that the processes and the steps of the work that have to be done, you manage those processes. And when it comes to leading, this is where you inspire people to get the very best out of them. You got to remember that your job as a leader is to put yourself in a position that you can get the very best out of the people that we've invited into our organizations to help us be successful. Now that we understand the difference between management and leadership, let's go ahead and talk about some of the qualities that leaders possess. What is it that makes you different? What is it that makes you stand out? What is it that makes people want to get behind you and follow you to the vision and getting the goals done? Well, there are certain qualities that leaders possess. And the first one is they know what they want and they know how to get it. So now as you start your career, maybe you don't know how you get it yet, but you have to be able to develop a plan to know what you want. How do you want to succeed? How do you want to move forward? Where do you see yourself in the next 3 years? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? But get an understanding of who you are as a leader, one, and what you want to attain throughout your leadership journey. And then Push yourself to act. Think about persistence. Think about perseverance. Are you going to be that leader that anytime a problem happens, you just throw the goal out the window? Or are you going to be that person that jumps over that hurdle and makes your goal a reality? You know, another great quality about good leaders is they take more risks, and because they take risks, they make more mistakes. Now, people will say to me all the time, but wait a minute, you know, you advocate growing from your mistakes. I'm making mistakes at work. Well, one of the things that you got to remember is when we were younger, making mistakes were a bad thing. When we were younger, we got in trouble when we made mistakes. But now that we get into the workforce, we hang on to those experiences to say we can't make mistakes at work. But what happens is this keeps us stagnant. This keeps us stymied. This doesn't give us the opportunity to accept new responsibilities. This doesn't give us the opportunity to think outside the box, because if we do, and if we make a mistake, we're going to get in trouble at work. You know what? To grow in your leadership skills, mistakes are going to happen. In my book, Ultimate Leadership, 10 Rules of Success, Rule number 7 deals with experience comes from mistakes, and mistakes come from lack of experience. Now, if you know that, for you to gain experience, you're going to be making mistakes. And one of the things to think about is when you become a mentor, the things that I share with people who say that I'm their mentor is the experiences, the successes, and the failures that I've had throughout my career. Now that you have your leadership qualities, let's think about some of the leadership attributes. What are the attributes that a great leader needs to have to be successful in their role as a leader? Well, I just put a couple of them up here, and there's a few that you could just look at, but there are just so many more on the internet. Take the opportunity to go out and learn some different attributes and see what's going to fit into your foundation of leadership. But I want to highlight a couple. First off is integrity. The foundation of who you are as a leader comes from your integrity, and something that you've got to hang on to. From your integrity, you're going to grow trust within your workforce. The people who are following you know that you're an authentic leader. They know that you're a real leader, and they're going to trust that you have their best interests in heart. Another great attribute is respect. You not only need to respect yourself, but you need to respect the people that you come in contact with. And it shouldn't make a difference how they're treating you. People are going to treat you sometimes horribly in business. Are you going to stoop to their level and be disrespectful back? You want to be able to hold yourself with honor. You want to be able to hold yourself to the highest of standard and never allow anybody to bring you down to their level. Another thing that you need to respect is you need to respect your workforce. You need to respect your organization. You need to respect your responsibilities. You need to respect the position that you hold. But if you don't value the people that you're working with, you are not going to respect them. Now, people that you work with are going to have different beliefs than you. They're going to have different religious beliefs. They're going to have different political affiliations. They're just going to have different beliefs than you do. Now, one of the things to think about is you don't have to like their beliefs, but inside there is a person, and you need to respect that person. And when you respect people, you value people, and now you're able to lead them genuinely. Because without respect and without valuing people, you're not going to lead them. You're just going to wind up manipulating them, and that's not the way to go. You need to be able to be a decisive leader. If somebody comes to you and says, I've got a problem, and you say, well, let me get back to you, you need to get back to them. If you don't get back to them, you're now affecting your leadership credibility. But also, if a decision has to be made, try to make the decision as quickly as practical as you now gather that information. Don't wait a week. Don't wait 2 weeks. Don't forget that a decision has to be made, because again, now you're affecting your leadership credibility. Another great one is that leaders deliver. You're going to have to be a leader that delivers what you say you're going to deliver. If people are relying on you, they need to know that what you say is what's going to happen. Your word has to be stronger than oak, and you need to deliver when you say you're going to deliver. Okay, so now we know about the qualities of a leader. Now we know about the leadership attributes. Let's go ahead and look at some of the leadership styles. And there are a lot of styles that are out there. And they're autocratic, democratic, transactional, transformational, they're participative. And you can go online and you can see a lot of different leadership models or a lot of different leadership styles. And really, you can't put yourself into one line of how you're going to be a leader. You've got to be able to take a smattering of all these leadership styles, and you need to be able to polish them and create it into your own. Because depending on who you are as a leader, and depending who are the people that are following you, you may have to use different leadership styles with different people. So when we look at these leadership styles here and do a little bit more research on autocratic and democratic, transactional, transformational, and participative, but one of the things that I'll ask you to spend some time on is learn the components of servant leadership. I'm going to tell you right now, here is your secret sauce. If you want to excel at being the best leader that you can be, learn and study the components of servant leadership. What servant leadership says is that your job is to serve the people that work within your organization. People don't work for you. You need to take the mentality that you work for them. And think about servant leadership, because when you think about those 5 leadership styles we just talked about, and when you think about the components of servant leadership, if you can put all those together, but know that your job, your responsibility as a leader is to get the very best out of the people within our organization, you need to serve them to do that. You need to listen to them. You need to help them grow. You need to use the art of persuasion. And I got to tell you, if you use servant leadership as a foundation for your leadership style, you're not only going to find a workforce that appreciates it, but more importantly, you're going to find a workforce that will follow you, and that's what you're after. If you're interested in learning more about servant leadership, you want to go to our products page at www.chriscebollero.com, and we have a whole course on servant leadership. Like I said, this is the foundation of my leadership style, and I think that if you're looking for something to help you develop, you've just found a great leadership style in servant leadership. So now let's go ahead and think about why you're here. What are some of the basic leadership skills that you need to know that's going to help you move to the next step? And here they are. There's 8 of them, and I'm not going to read them to you, and we're going to cover each one individually. And this isn't all the leadership skills that you need to know. These are just some of the basic ones that you need to understand, that as you are now in a position to make decisions and give direction to your department or organization, you need to be able to focus on, and you need to be able to try to make these some powerful strengths within your leadership toolbox. First off, let's go ahead and talk about vision. Vision is the most important component to the success of your organization. And I'm going to say that again. Vision is the most important component to the success of your organization. And I can't state that enough, because one of the things we need to do for the people that work with us is we need to be able to give them a direction. They need to be able to see where they're going. And I'm going to explain to you why here in a couple slides. Not only do we need to see it, not only do we need to know where we're going, but our people need to know how they fit into the big picture of the success and the vision of the organization. And they're the ones that are going to help us reach the vision. They're the ones that are going to help us be successful. So we really need to outline for them how their responsibilities fit into the big picture, and this is going to give them inspiration. This is going to give them motivation. This is what's going to give them the, I want to get up in the morning to come and do my job, because they know that the end result is they're going to achieve the vision of the organization, and it's going to bring the organization to greatness. Everybody wants to win the Super Bowl. Everybody wants to get a World Series ring. And unfortunately, not everyone has the opportunities to do that. But they can have the opportunity to work in a successful organization and win and win and win. Constantly small wins until you get to those bigger wins. That's why a vision is important. Another thing that the vision does is it helps lead you as the leader. Where do we need to get to? It paints the target for you to be successful. And it gives you that fire. It gives you that fuel. And one of the things that you need to know is your passion of trying to reach the vision is what's going to light the fire in others. Inspiration. Inspiration is to breathe life into, and you want to be able to breathe life into the people who are following you and help them reach the vision. Now, I talked a little bit before about my friend and mentor, John Maxwell, and it's a great honor for me to be part of the John Maxwell team. But John takes you through a little bit of a practice when he talks about vision. What he'll say is I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think about your front door. Then I want you to go ahead and think about your car. Then what he'll go ahead and say is, when I asked you to think about your front door, you actually saw a picture of your front door. When I asked you to think about your car, you actually saw a picture of your car. You didn't see the word CAR, you saw the picture of your car. The reason for that is we are wired to think in pictures. Everything we do, we think in pictures. If that's the case, if we do not have a vision within our organization, how do the people that work for us know where they're going and what they're trying to get to? So that's why the vision is so important. You know, one of the things I talk to leaders about is their vision statement. Is there a vision statement in the organization? Leaders will raise their hand every time I'm speaking to a group of leaders. Then my next question to them is, who can recite it for me? And those hands don't go up very, very quickly. But here's my question to you. If you can't recite your vision statement, and if you as the leader don't know what the vision statement is, why do your employees need to know what the vision statement is? Again, the vision statement is very, very important to the success of your organizations. Paint the picture for your employees to see and know where the organization is going and how they fit into that vision, how they fit into that big picture of success. This is going to empower your employees. This is going to be able to give them that picture that they know that they can reach that vision. And if you're one of those organizations that don't use your vision statement, I would say that you build a campaign around a vision statement. Maybe you keep the same one that you have. Maybe you call some of the workforce in and some of the leadership team in and throw the vision statement out on the table and say, let's develop a new one. Once it's developed, maybe you make 2 or 3. Send it out to the organization and let them vote on the one that they want. But then build a campaign around the vision. Everybody needs to buy into the vision and know where we're going. Another skill that you need to know when it comes to leadership, and this shouldn't be a surprise, is you need to be able to communicate. And you need to be able to communicate effectively. This isn't just your verbal communication, but it's your nonverbal communication. It's your writing skills. It's your presentation skills. Communication is a cornerstone for you being successful. And what you need to do is you need to polish this skill and you need to hone it like no other. And one of the questions that I want to ask you, because leaders don't do this very well in the beginning, is how well do you listen? Let's talk about your listening skills. And we got a slide coming up that's going to talk about how to be an effective listener. But you have to remember, your role as a leader is that you have to get the very best out of the employees that are doing the work. And to do that, you've got to be able to listen to them. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. You know, when it comes to communication, it really is a difficult process. We do it every day, but do we truly understand what goes into communication? And communication really involves 3 primary steps. And the first step is your thought. This is where you take your concept. This is where you take your idea. This is where you take your feelings. And now that's the point that you want to try to get across. But what's the best way to do that? You now need to take that feeling, you now need to take that idea, and you need to be able to put it into some type of words. You need to put it into some type of symbol. You need to be able to take your thought and now share it with somebody else. And that's where that challenge comes in. I mean, how many times have you ever been in a situation where you were talking to somebody and the words just didn't come out right, and you kind of irritated the other person or you made them upset, and they said, well, you just said this about me. And I said, no, that's not what I meant. Please let me explain. So now as we take that thought and we try to encode it and put it into some type of word or symbols, this is where the challenge is. But it's not as challenging as after you take your thought and after you put it into words and send that message out, the decoding comes in. Is if I'm the listener, I now have to be able to take your thought and take your words and try to interpret what you meant by that. So this is where the challenge comes in. The receiver now needs to translate your message and put it into words that they can understand. Because, that's the whole process of communication sometimes, is we now talk about, what is he trying to tell me? What is he trying to say to me? Is he insulting me? Is he telling me I'm not a great worker? That may not be the case, but that may be the message that they're receiving from you. I mean, so this is where the whole challenge comes in when it comes to communication. Your thought develops the message, and then the listener has to now unravel the message and make sure that they understand it the way that you meant to tell it. And I got to tell you, I mean, we communicate every day. but do we communicate effectively? Do we think about how this message is going to come across to the next person? And we really need to take that into consideration. When it comes to communication, it's really important that we pay attention to when people are listening to us. Your active listening skills is going to be the foundation of how you're able to communicate with your workforce. There's a great quote that comes from the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama says, when you talk, you're only repeating what you already know. But when you listen, you may learn something new. And here's some of the top components of being an effective listener. First off is you want to be able to face the speaker. You want to be able to have good posture. You want to make great eye contact. When you make eye contact with somebody, they may look away as they try to gather their thoughts and try to figure out what to say next. This may be very tempting for you to look away and look at your watch or look at your phone or look out the window. But I caution you, if the speaker comes back and they see that you're not paying attention to them, you're going to lose their trust. And you've got to be able to ensure that when they're talking, you're facing them and you're making good eye contact with them no matter what happens. You need to minimize distractions. And these are the environmental distractions. These are the distractions of your cell phone. These are the distractions of your computer monitor. These are the distractions of what's going on around you. If you need to take the person to a different area to talk where it minimizes those distractions, consider doing that as well. One of the things that you need to think about is you need to respond appropriately. And this is very difficult to do when we're communicating. Sometimes, people are going to push your buttons and you've got to be able to say, how do I want to react here? We're going to talk about emotional intelligence coming up here in a little bit. And it's really important that you don't allow your emotions to dictate your actions when you're speaking or when you're responding to people. Always keep an open mind. Remember, your beliefs are not other people's beliefs. And just because they have a different belief than you doesn't mean they're wrong. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. It doesn't mean that they don't deserve your respect. You've got to be able to keep an open mind. Sometimes when employees come into our office, they're upset and they're angry and they're pointing a finger at us, or they're pointing a finger at the organization, or they're pointing a finger at your leadership team. And it's very, very easy now to get that fire in your belly that you want to be defensive. But remember, it's not personal. It's strictly business. Find out what the catalyst is for them being upset. They need you to be calm, and they need you to help find a business decision to why they're feeling the way that they're feeling. Being engaged, this is where your nonverbal communication comes in. You want to be able to nod your head. You want to be able to smile. And of course, those verbal cues, the ahas, the yes, the I sees. This is just going to make the speaker realize that you're engaged and you really want to hear what they have to say. But you know what? There's a secret to being an effective listener, and I'm going to share that secret with you today. We hear throughout our leadership career that we've got to listen to our employees. Our success depends on listening to what our employees are saying. I want to change that paradigm. I want you to stop listening to what employees are saying. Now, wait a minute, Chris. If this is what people are saying, that we need to listen to what our employees are saying, why are you telling us that we need to stop? What's the point? Well, the point is, instead of listening to what your employees are saying, start listening to what your employees are feeling. If you can listen to their feelings, you're going to understand their words. And I think that this is where that empathy comes in. So when you empathize with the people that are in your office who have the challenges and who are seeking your guidance, who are seeking answers to their questions, instead of listening to the words, listen to their feelings, understand what they're feeling, and you're going to understand their words. I think that's a best practice. So try to remember that when it comes to your communication skills. Another basic leadership skill is your ability to develop relationships. Your success hinges on how well you can build relationships. Relationships with your workforce, relationships with your leadership team, relationships with your clients or customers, relationships to your vendors. It's all about relationships. And you've got to be able to develop this professional network. You've got to be able to develop trust. You've got to be able to develop respect. People want to know who you are, and developing relationships and them knowing that you're a resource to them that can help them be successful or to help them get to the next step, or that you genuinely care about other people. This is what's going to build your leadership credibility. Think about how you're going to build those relationships, because this is going to be an important component of your success as a leader. Now, when we talk about communication, one of the things that I want you to think about is the art of persuasion. You know, when we talk to people, we don't want to talk to people in a way that is offensive. We don't want to talk to people and try to manipulate them with our words. We want to be able to be influential. We want to be able to persuade them to follow us. We want to be able to persuade them to accept our ideas. We want to be able to persuade them that we know how to lead the organization and we want them to follow us. People are going to value your opinion. You need to be able to develop the ability to persuade people with your decisions, to persuade people with your visions. This is all about it. So now, when you talk about your communication skills, when you talk about your ability to develop relationships, it really is going to be important that you persuade people to understand where you're coming from. And what's the best way to do that? Well, first off is you need to establish your credibility. You've got to become an expert in your field. Learn everything there is to learn about what your job is, about what your career field does, about where it's going. Think about writing articles. Think about speaking at your conferences. Think about becoming a leadership expert. Grow your credibility as a professional, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to get your points across. One of the other things that you need to think about is you need to think about identifying common ground. When you debate an issue, I have my side, you have your side. So does that mean that you have to give up your beliefs or give up your understanding? That really doesn't mean that. So in a persuasive argument, you may have to be able to find common ground. And this is where you reinforce your position. One of the things that I can tell you is that as you look at common ground, you need to know both sides of the argument. Just because you're coming from the side of the pro situation and the person you're speaking with has the con argument, you still need to know both sides of those arguments. You need to know where that other person is going to be coming from with their opinions. And then this is what's really going to help you connect emotionally with the people that you're talking to. Because remember, it's all about respect. It's all about valuing other people. And it's all about trying to get your points across to be as successful as you can be. And with that, I'm going to talk about a positive attitude. Don't we just know those negative people that really just kind of suck the life out of the room when they come in? Regardless of what other people are doing, you need to be the one to display the positive attitude. You need to be able to be the one that rises above what other people are doing. But your attitude has to be above reproach. Regardless of what goes on in your day, and this is very easier said than done, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what. But regardless of what goes on in your day, you've got to be the one to keep that positive attitude. The smile that you give is the smile that you receive. If your workforce thinks that you're frustrated, they're going to be frustrated. If your workforce thinks that you're on pins and needles, they're going to be on pins and needles. And what you have to remember is when you look in a mirror, the mirror is going to be the employees looking back at you with your attitude. You know, I tell you what, having a positive attitude is very inspiring. It's very contagious. And when you set the standards of having a positive attitude, that's the expectation that the workforce needs to have as well. We don't want those negative people bringing us down. We don't want those negative people throwing water on our fire. Everybody should have a positive attitude. Everybody should work towards the vision. And we need to be able to figure out how to work with people's frustrations if they have them. But we don't want them to precipitate negativity. Our next leadership skill is we need to have good decision-making skills. You know, what do I do? Which way? Do I go down this road? Do I go down that road? I really don't know, and it's really difficult to understand. Man, I got to tell you, when it comes to making decisions, sometimes we're confused. Sometimes we're unclear. Sometimes we don't know the direction that we need to go. But decision-making can be challenging. There are two things that help grow your leadership credibility. First off is your ability to communicate. Second is your decision-making skills. So I'm going to give you the secret recipe to making great decisions. And if you follow this recipe, you are now going to be able to have the opportunity to figure out what you need to do and how you need to move forward. So when you think about the what of a problem, these are the things you should be asking yourself. What do you want to achieve with this solution? What are the facts that cause this to happen? What would happen if I didn't make a decision right now? How would it affect things? And then finally, what is it that I need to do to fix this? Your next question is going to be, why did this occur? And you really want to get into the weeds. You really want to get into the root cause of why this happened and try to figure out, why did this occur? And then you go back to the same question as you had in what is, do I need to act right now? Is this a problem? Is this a fire? Is this something that I can wait to see how it's going to work out? But you need to be able to ask the question, do I need to act right now? Because that is going to dictate how fast you have to come up with a solution. And then finally, when you think about figuring out why, and you need to use a root cause analysis model, the 5 whys is one of the easiest ones to work with. And if you're not familiar with the 5 whys, there's a slew of information on Google that'll kind of outline the 5 why process. Next, your how. So how will this be different? When I develop an answer to this problem, how will this make things different? What you need to be able to do is, how do you find out more about what's going on? And how do you determine what people need to be involved in this? And this is one of those steps right here that leaders forget, is that you need to be able to get people involved as you start developing these decisions. And this is for a couple reasons. One is you're just one person. But if you get other people involved, now you're getting their experiences. Now you're getting their understandings. Now you're getting their expertise. And when you put people in a room to address an issue, now you're developing buy-in. Now you're developing synergy. Now you're developing your teamwork. And that's what's really important. Next on our list is the where. Where did this issue arise? Now, one of the things that you got to think about is, just because the faucet is leaking at the sink doesn't mean the problem is at the sink. Is it that there's a mechanism within the pipes that's causing that to leak? So you need to be able to think about, where did the issue arise that caused this problem initially? There's a concept out there called the normalization of deviance. And let me explain what that means to you. So let's say this process has 10 steps. So as you go through your everyday of doing this process and the 10 steps, your workforce may say, you know what? I don't really need to do step 8. So now it becomes 9 steps. And that becomes the normal. And then someone else is going to say, you know what? We really don't need to do step 6. And now there's only 8 steps. And now that becomes the new normal. You've got to be able to make certain that when you look at an issue and where the problem arose, that it didn't arise with people who were skipping steps, and having a true understanding of where this issue came from. Now, what's the impact of this issue? How powerful of an impact is this to the workforce? Is this to the organization? Is this to our customers? Because that's going to go ahead and dictate to you how you're going to move forward. And one of the things that you have to figure out is it important where it arose? Is it important where it happened? If it is important where it happened, why is it important where it happened? Because that's going to help guide and set a timeline to how crucial this is as well. Always ask yourself this question: who is affected by this problem? Who is involved in this problem? Who needs to be informed that this problem occurred? Another thing that we don't think about. Now, you need to be able to determine the timeline of when you want to be able to give this information to your boss, to the other leaders in your organization. But you always need to make sure people are informed. You may take your time to get them the information, but if it's something that's important, who do you have to inform, and make sure that you don't miss that step? And one of the things to think about here is, am I trying to please somebody with this decision? If you're making a decision just to please somebody else, you really need to evaluate why you're making that decision. Don't make decisions just to appease. Make decisions because it has a good business case. And then the when. When did the issue arise? When do we need to act? And when must we resolve this challenge? Because this is something that's really important. You know, if you've got a leak in your warehouse that's been leaking for 6 months, the problem necessarily isn't the leak. The problem is the damage that it's done now. So when did the issue arise? When do we need to act? And when must this be resolved? This is going to help you. When you think about these steps right here, and when you think about the questions within the 6 steps, this is going to help you make the best decision that you can make. Another great skill is dealing with emotional intelligence. Now, I got to tell you, and I've already talked about my book, The Ultimate Leadership, 10 Rules to Success. And this was a book that I developed about my experiences as a young leader and how many mistakes I made as I got to being a successful leader. And we're really talking about 10 years worth of mistakes that finally get you to the point of saying, I'm doing things wrong and I need to fix them. But when it comes to emotional intelligence, my rule number 1 is never allow your emotions to dictate your actions. As soon as you allow your emotions to dictate your actions, you've now lost. You're going to chip away at your leadership integrity. You're going to chip away at your leadership credibility. And no matter how many times you apologize for it, you're going to carry that black cloud with you for a long time within your professional career. And you need to be able to make sure that happens. So what emotional intelligence does is it gives you the opportunity to understand and manage your own emotions, and then help manage the emotions of the people who are around you. And there's 5 elements to emotional intelligence. Let's spend some time talking about each. First off is self-awareness. You need to understand why you respond the way you do. When somebody comes in and they're angry with you and you get defensive, what's making you defensive? Really have an understanding. This is truly developing an understanding of who you are as a person, who you are as a leader, and how you respond to challenging situations. And the next one is self-regulation. This really comes down to self-control. And when we start to get angry, when we start to get upset, when the steam is coming out of our ears, are we able to control ourselves in those situations? Well, we need to, because the first time that we allow our emotions to dictate our actions, we're going to chip away at our leadership credibility. You know, we talked about empathy in our communication skills, and empathy is putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Understand where they're coming from. This is not about you when people come in and they have challenges. This is about them. So empathize with what's going on, empathize with the listener, empathize with the workforce, and this is going to help you understand how other people are reacting with their emotions. But it's going to give you a good, clear path to understanding what's happening with the people around you within your organization. And when we talk about motivation here, this isn't motivation of the workforce. This is self-motivation. This is your motivation. And one of the hardest things that we have to do as leaders is we have to motivate ourselves. We got to make certain that our attitude is always positive. We got to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable. We got to make sure that we exceed the expectations that we set for the organization. So one of the toughest things we do as a leader is self-motivation. But one of the most important things that we have to do for emotional intelligence is we always have to be on top of our game. We always have to be motivated. We always have to be ready to inspire. We're on stage all the time and people are watching us. And this self-motivation step right here is going to be a powerful ally for you that people are going to see in you no matter what happens. You're going to be calm, you're going to be cool, you're going to be collected, you're always going to be in a good mood, and you're always going to be ready to inspire and motivate. And then finally is your social skills. This really comes down to how you're able to communicate, how you're able to listen, how you're able to get your points across. When you think about developing your social skills, there are going to be times where you want to communicate your point, but you're feeling a little bit fired up about that point. Is that the opportunity now in conjunction with self-regulation of how you want to get that point across? So when you think about emotional intelligence, these are the 5 components that are going to help you be successful. But here's rule number 1, ladies and gentlemen. Never allow your emotions to dictate your actions. As soon as you allow your emotions to dictate your actions, you're going to fight an uphill battle for a long time. Our next skill really goes to dealing with problem solving. And when we think about being able to solve problems, this is, again, going to be important to the workforce. Now, they're going to come to you with their problems. They're going to come to you and say, I need a solution here. And developing good problem-solving skills really deals with first anticipating the problem. What is the problem? You know, being able to keep your experience in your mind to know that, you know what, if we keep going down this road, this is going to cause this process to break. This is going to cause this process to back up. So think ahead. It's almost like a chess game. You've got to be able to anticipate those problems. One of the other things is you need to be able to accept the truth about the problem. There are a lot of times when I go into organizations and I try to help the leaders of that organization kind of change the culture and engage the workforce. One of the big challenges are when problems come up, they don't accept the problem as the truth. And you got to know that as these issues are arising, until you prove it otherwise, the issues are real. So accept the truth of the problem. Next is see the big picture. When you think about your problem-solving skills and you need to make a decision for today, you do need to look at how this decision affects the big picture. One of the other things that you need to think about is you need to look at one thing at a time. So as you now start to gather information, look at it at the point of one item at a time. Or if there's multiple problems, look at each problem one at a time. Don't try to multitask this process because you're going to find that there's going to be challenges within there. And one of the great things to do is great leadership skills really result in the ability to get other people involved. And the reason for that is people have other experiences. People have other skills. People have different understandings. Sometimes getting somebody in there for an extra set of eyes is really important to this process. But the other thing you do when you bring people in is now you're teaching them problem solving skills. So now as they start to move forward, they're developing critical thinking skills, they're developing problem solving skills, and eventually they may not need to bring this issue to your office anymore because they now have learned how to solve problems, and instead they're coming with you to say, we had this problem with this process, this is what we found out about it, this is the solution that we came up with, and this is the outcome. Now what you're doing is you're growing your workforce and you're creating initiative, and that's what's going to be really important. Another basic leadership skill that goes with problem solving is your ability to have good critical thinking skills, because this is the chess game that you need to now play as you need to come up with ways to solve problems. As you start to utilize your critical thinking skills, the first thing you do is identify where the challenge lies. Next thing you do is you analyze that challenge to make the determination of why it occurred and how's the best way to think about moving forward. After you've analyzed the situation, now you need to evaluate what the solution could be. So maybe you have one solution, maybe you have two solutions. Come up with a couple different solutions because you don't know what's going to work. You may come up with a solution for an issue, and now you've developed this whole process to fix this issue, and now you get to put it in place and realize that it didn't work. So that's where I like to have one or two different solutions ready to go. This way I have a plan B. And, you know, people say to me, you know what, Chris, you're going in with a plan B. That means you're not set on your plan A. And I always come back with the analogy, even when I was in the military, they make you jump with two parachutes. You got one on your back, you got one on your chest. Why are they giving you two? Is that because the main parachute is going to work every single time? Why do I need to carry two? It doesn't hurt to have a plan B. And if you don't need it, you've just developed more opportunity in that room as you develop those solutions. Now what you got to do is you got to choose the best solution. So even though that you have a couple different ones, which one are you going to try first? And then see how that works for you. And then finally, you want to be able to evaluate the process. This is a step that normally gets forgotten. So after you've identified and analyzed the problem, you've evaluated where you need to go, you've choose the appropriate solution, you're not going back and you're checking to make sure everything's going to be okay. Develop a process of regular inspections to make sure that this process that you've put in place is going to work. Your next leadership skill deals with motivation. And one of the things that it's important is you need to be able to inspire and you need to be able to motivate your workforce. And you've got to be able to find ways to do that. Now, I'm going to tell you, this may be a surprise to you, but in reality, you cannot motivate anybody. Motivation, it comes from inside the individual or it comes from external sources. But here's the bottom line. The individual has to be able to accept for them to be successful in being motivated. The only thing that we could do as leaders is we can break down the barriers within our organization that causes a lack of motivation. But we need to develop an environment where motivation can flourish. We need to develop an environment where the workforce is inspired. We need to develop an environment that as people are going through their day, they feel good about their job and their ability to be successful, and that's going to help grow their motivation. And one of the things to do is you need to be able to thank your employees for the work that they do. You need to be able to pat them on the back. Everybody likes a pat on the back every now and again. Do we thank our employees for the work that we do? You know, I used to make a comment earlier in my career, and I used to say, you know what? Every 2 weeks, we're even. You give me some work, and every 2 weeks, I give you a paycheck, and we're even. And that was such a wrong mentality to have when it came to try to motivate the workforce. You need to be able to meet with them. You need to be able to listen to them. You need to be able to thank them. And you need to give them feedback on the work that they're doing for the organization. One of the things that's important here is everybody wants to be part of that winning team. We've talked about that already. And help them grow and help them develop and help them do the very best job that they can be. One of the things that you've got to remember is our job as leaders is to get the very best out of the employees so they can help our organization be successful. If we're not listening to them, if we're not providing feedback to them, if we're not encouraging them to come up with new ideas, we're not going to help them be successful, and they're not going to help our organization be successful. The thing that you want to do as well is you want to be able to encourage within the organization a sense of ownership. You need to be able to remember that people are coming into your organization because you've invited them in. You've hired them in to help you be successful. Give them a sense of ownership that what they're doing plays a major factor into the success of the organization. And then you want to be able to celebrate all the successes that you can. Next, another thing is you need to get to know your people. Your people are the backbone to your success, and you need to be able to know who they are. You need to be able to know what their goals are. You need to be able to know what motivates them, because now what you've got to do is you've got to inspire them to grow. You've got to inspire them to become the very best that they can be. And now this is where the challenge is going to come in, because if you don't know who they are, how do you motivate them? How do you get them to the next step? How do they help you be successful as an organization? You know, one of the things when I'm speaking to groups of leaders is one of the questions I love to ask is, how many people here have employees that have families? And I see a lot of hands go up. And then I'll say, well, don't raise your hands now for this next question. Can you tell me what their names are? And there are a lot of blank stares. So just because I know that you're married and just because I know you have kids, I want to be able to pay attention. Ask your employees how their family is by name. You know, one of the greatest inventions that I think ever came about was Facebook. Facebook allows, and I don't go out and solicit my employees to be my friends on Facebook, but if they want me to be their friends, I'm happy to accept their Facebook friendship. But one of the things that it does for me is it lets me see what's going on in their life outside of work. You know, who took their kid to the first hockey game, the ski vacation that they took to Colorado, or their birthday party for their child. But now when I see those people in the organization, I'm able to talk to them and say, hey, I saw you had that birthday party. How did things go? And they're going to be more appreciative. But what you have to be able to do is to find common ground. People like to be able to feel special. People like when you compliment them. Pay attention to their work. Stop by their work area and tell them they did a great job on that presentation. They did a great job with that client. Give them hope for tomorrow. Let them buy into the vision of the organization. Let them know how their responsibilities help the organization be successful, because they want a better tomorrow. Everybody wants to work for a winning team, and help them develop the hope that they're working for a successful organization. Now, we talked about vision. And we talked about the desire for direction again. So this is where vision is going to come into place, and we need to be able to make that vision so clear that everybody knows where they're going. Our next leadership skill deals with coaching. When you think about coaching, what exactly comes to mind? Well, very funny, but that's not what I was talking about. I'm really talking about your opportunity to grow the people that you're working with. Now, you have to remember, the people that we hire into our organizations, they have specific sets of skills. They're coming from our competitors, or they're coming from other organizations, and they have a specific set of skills. Now, their skills may help our organization be successful, but what if it doesn't? What if we have to now grow their skills? What if we have to help them reach their goals for them to grow their professional effectiveness? This is where coaching and mentoring comes in. Now, even though that you're a new leader, are you really going to be considered to be a mentor? Well, believe it or not, yes, you could, because people are going to look at your work ethic. People are going to look at your appearance. People are going to look at how you carry yourself. People are going to look at your attitude, and they're going to say, you know what? I want to be just like that person. So from the very first day, people are going to be watching you, and now they're going to want to emulate you. They may come up to you and say, can you help me attain? Can you help me get to the next step? But coaching is going to be very, very important, because coaching is going to give you the opportunity to help polish their skills of how they do their job. And when we think about the best ways to coach people, sometimes people come in and they're going to have a problem. And instead of listening to their problem and helping them find the solution, we're just going to give them the solution. Now, barking orders at people and telling people what to do and solving their problems, the only thing that that's going to do for you is that's going to start to build a toxic relationship, that you're respecting the people you work with, and you need to be able to help guide them. It may come down to you giving them advice. Sometimes when we think about how we're going to help people get to the next step, we could just give them advice to say, you know what, if I were you, this is how I would handle the situation, or give them a couple things to consider. The next thing that we do is offer guidance. So giving advice and offering guidance is really kind of in the line of the same thing, you know, but sometimes as you give people advice and as they say, I think that's a really good idea, I'm going to try that, they may not know how to get that done. And that's where your offering guidance comes in. Another thing that you can do when it comes down to coaching and mentoring is asking more questions. The more questions you ask, the more you understand. But the more questions you ask, now it gives you the impression of what the other person understands about the issue. So I think that that's where asking questions is really important. And then finally, your job is to help people solve problems. Now, when you think about these steps here, One of the things that you have to think about is there's a fine line here between coaching and mentoring. And when we go to the bottom right here, barking orders and solving others' problems and giving them advice, this is really directive. And you really want to stay away from being directive. When we think about asking questions and helping others solve their problems, this is really non-directive. And what we're doing here is we're trying to help guide them into what's happening next. This is really the coaching aspects of our job. When we ask questions, when we help others solve problems, we're coaching them. Now, one of the things that we need to think about is right here in the middle. Giving advice, offering guidance, and asking questions really kind of deals with as you're mentoring, as you're growing people. So don't be directive and telling. Know when you need to coach and what the steps are there, and then know the finer points of mentoring. And this is where you share your experience. This is where you guide them from what you've learned. And this is really an important component. So why do we need to coach people? Because it encourages them, it nurtures them, it builds your leadership credibility. But what it does is it really creates a team. It really creates the opportunity for people to learn. It really creates the opportunity for people to be the very best that they can be. Now remember this. If you cannot help grow your employees and help them be successful, they are not going to help you be successful within your organization. We need to get them to the point where they're doing the very best that they can be, because when they're doing the best, our organizations become the best. When our organizations become the best, the clients and the customers get the very best experience possible. So we've covered a lot of information here. And to get to the height of being a good leader, you need to be able to make certain that you develop your leadership skills and you now practice the science of leadership. Leadership is an art and a science, and you have to know the formulas that make leadership work. That's the science of leadership. And to get to the top, it's very, very easy. But the things that you have to do is you've got to be able to work to get up those stairs and get to the very top of your leadership game. You need to develop goals, you need to develop plans, and you need to push yourself forward to get to the top. Now, one of the things that I want to leave you with some facts. These are important facts of leadership. The key to your leadership is being able to develop priorities. You've got to be able to know what's important. You've got to be able to know what comes first. You've got to be able to know how to get to the next step. The most important ingredient of your leadership is your integrity. Your leadership foundation is based on your integrity, who you are, how you carry yourself, what people understand about you, that your integrity is not going to be compromised by anyone else. The ultimate test of leadership is you need to be able to create positive change. The difference between a leader and a manager is that a manager can't create and sustain positive change. But when you're a leader, you can create and sustain good positive change. The quickest way to gain leadership credibility is with your problem-solving abilities. You need to be able to solve their problems, use your critical thinking skills, and be decisive when it comes to making a decision. The extra plus into leadership is your attitude. You have to keep a positive attitude in the face of adversity, in the face of other people's bad attitudes, in the face of other people being disrespectful. Don't allow who you are as a leader to be affected by the people who don't want you to be successful. Maintain a positive attitude at all times. And the most appreciable asset of your leadership is your people. I'm going to give you a secret right here. What you do in your career doesn't make you successful. What your people do as a leader in your career is what determines your success. So if your employees are happy, if they're motivated, if they're developing, you're going to be seen as a great leader. If they have bad attitudes, if they have poor productivity, that's going to reflect on your leadership. So for you to be successful as a leader, you've got to help your people be successful as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I've had a really great time of talking to you about basic leadership skills. And again, leadership is a science, and you've got to be able to know how the science works so you can paint the portrait of success. And to do that, you've just got to commit yourself. You've got to develop your basic leadership skills. You've got to polish them. You've got to make them become a core of who you are as a leader. And I'll tell you, if you need to, go ahead and watch this presentation a couple times, but develop who you are as a leader. Understand where you're going as a leader. And pretty soon, you're going to climb that stairway and you're going to be at the top of your leadership game. But I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me every time I have the opportunity to come and chat with you and teach teach you a little bit about leadership, and hopefully you've enjoyed our presentation today on basic leadership skills. I want to talk to you about a couple other products we have. We talked about servant leadership in this presentation. If you want to go to www.chriscebollero.com and our products page, you can watch the course Servant Leadership, and this is going to outline for you the importance of being a servant leader and how to develop a successful organization. Now, one of the things that you can do as well is, if you like servant leadership, you can buy the license so you're able to teach servant leadership. And what that comes with is that comes with the PowerPoint, that comes with the instructor resource manual, which tells you how to teach the class. It gives you a bunch of student questions and student activities. Another great course that we have is using leadership quotes to guide your career. There's a lot of great leadership quotes that are out there. And if we look at the philosophy that's inside those leadership quotes, here are some really important people that have now developed an understanding and have learned from their experience, and they're teaching it to you in their leadership quotes. So I really like this course, because within this course what we do is we give you the leadership quote, and then we give you the philosophy behind that leadership quote. And again, this is another one of our courses. And if you enjoy using leadership quotes to guide your career, you can also teach this course and buy the license, which will come with the PowerPoint with instructor notes. It comes with an instructor resource manual and allows you to have student questions and activities for your classroom. And of course, my book, Ultimate Leadership, 10 Rules of Success, you can find that on Amazon.com. But if you're interested, there's over 12 hours of instruction with this course. You can buy the license to teach Ultimate Leadership, 10 Rules of Success. It comes with a PowerPoint, comes with a 125-page instructor resource manual, student activities and questions, and the license does give you the ability to teach that course. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to thank you for allowing me to join you. I've had a great time, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Ultimate Leadership Development Series. Thanks again for letting me join you.
Chris is an internationally recognized leadership expert with close to 30 years of experience. Chris has a proven track record for developing award-winning organizations. He is an author, motivational speaker, leadership coach, and teacher. Chris is available for leadership development, motivational speaking and teaching, and group and individual coaching. Check out our website at www.chriscebollero.com and register for other free leadership presentations. Thank you for joining us.